Welcome, and thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedules to try and make some sense out of this homework. We recognize this is a ton of info to digest, and I feel like we're just now finally understanding what we're undertaking, and we've been knee-deep in it for months, so we completely understand if something is unclear. Please ask questions. We'd be more than happy to follow up or answer any questions you might have before the homework starts. Like we said in our last meeting, this is yet another step that we're taking in the grand scheme of ultimately creating a prioritized list of management actions, but more specifically for today, creating a shorter list of better developed RMAs. I'm just now realizing that we did this to record, and I did not record. 2 more seconds. Now I'm recording. Okay. So welcome again, and thank you so much for joining us. One more time, please make sure your computers are on mute. And if you wouldn't mind typing your name for attendance, I think I got most of you, but in the event that I miss you, I want to make sure that we know you were here. Okay. So for today, we're going to give you guys a little bit of an informational why we have a new format for the documents, walk you through the documents, talk about the tasks that you'll be undertaking for these documents, and then talk about some homework logistics. And again, if at any point you have questions, please let me know, but there will be probably a half hour at the end to ask questions as well. Okay, so I'm actually going to start right here. So you guys remember that initially we had everything in the Survey Gizmo format, and that was really useful for collecting a lot of information on a lot of RMAs from a lot of people simultaneously. We no longer have that need now that we're past the first round of SEFCRE review, so we've moved from this broad information gathering process to seeking more targeted input from both the community working groups and then from the SEFCRE team as well in July and August when we have our second review. So to better facilitate this process, we've converted all of the RMAs into Word documents, so it will be very easy for you guys to go in and edit without having to download or any of the other logistics associated with the Survey Gizmo. So really quickly, a brief overview of the layout of the recommended management actions as Word documents. You're going to notice that they look really familiar because it's downloaded in the same format that your Survey Gizmo was, but we have a couple of additions this time. So the first thing that you're going to see is Tier 1 and Tier 2 information, which is your input. So this is the information that you guys originally put in the Survey Gizmo. Sometimes there will be marine planner information, and when there is none, it will simply say NA, because there was nothing filled out or you guys didn't feel like the marine planner was necessary for spatial assessment. That holds true for Tier 2 as well. Moving along, we have our next section. I'm sorry, I'm trying not to make anybody dizzy. We have our targeted feedback. So this also was in the Survey Gizmo, but you guys didn't get to see this because it was added after your input was already there. So we had targeted questions that we asked to the SEFCRE team and TAC, and their answers are below. Following that, we have a quick comments from the reviewers. So a lot of the times this section has the feedback that they had written into Tier 1 or Tier 2, but rather than capturing it all in the same place, we've separated it from your input so you could see what you said and then the feedback that you got from it. This information is also in all those PDFs that we sent you the link for the homework. Following that, we have a little bit more specialized questions from the reviewers. So this, in their comments and in their targeted questions, their feedback addressed some questions or information gaps or things that needed clarification. So all of those things where they need more information to help give you better feedback is going to be in this table. And again, this is just a quick and dirty overview. I'll give you a lot more specifics in a second. I just wanted to show you. In some cases, like for this section here, this is like a quick overview, like a Cliff's Notes of the versions that they put in here. If at any point you guys want to see the full information, like I said, it's in the full PDFs. So those look the same. They start out looking the same, just like Survey Gizmo. But for some of the sections where there was a really lengthy discussion, here's one, and here's another one down here. Our group facilitators, or small group table facilitators, have gone through and just gotten the major talking points out of these sections and put them into your comments from the reviewers. But again, if you want to see that full conversation, you can go into the PDFs at any point. Okay, and lastly on these sheets, there's a little section where you guys can ask questions back. So if in reviewing what you guys said, and then the subcommittee team and TAC got back to you with, and then the questions that they had for you guys in this table up here, there are still things that are a little bit ambiguous or maybe need more information for you guys to clarify. This is that section where you'd be putting that information at the bottom here. Okay. In a couple of cases, this section right here, like I said, this person has done a great job of identifying exactly where this came from. But in the case where that is not happening, we have an example where this one, yes, for the Tier 2 information, where no Tier 2 information had been filled out by community working group members, we have subcommittee team and TAC feedback that made it into the Tier 2, but it's always indicated where it's there. So this came from KB of the Florida Department of Environmental Protection. So you know that it's not a community working group member input. However, if the small group facilitator thought that it was that important to be there, it's there. And again, I'll explain later how to augment it or delete it, or it's your decision with whatever you'd like to do for it. So moving along into tasks, the first thing that we're going to ask you guys to do is review what you said. So basically go step by step with these documents. Read the questions again. Here's our Tier 1 information. Here's the question, and here's what you all identified as what your intended result was. So that's our phase 1. Next, review any additions captured in the March and April meetings. So occasionally you will see a section. This one doesn't? Are you sure? That's okay. So at the end of either your comments from the reviewers, or sometimes right in the questions from the Tier 1 and Tier 2, you're going to see something that looks like March and April 2015 updates. So what happened there was the community working group members had their initial input, the subcommittee team and TAC gave their feedback, and then after looking at that feedback and addressing it in the March and April meetings, our small group discussions had something where maybe the intent of the recommended management action was changed, or maybe they had a little bit more info that they wanted to augment the existing RMA with. But like I said, you'll find all of that information in the documents as well. So we're going to want to check that out. Like I said, we're going to want to go through the reviewer feedback. So we have our general commentary, once again, with our quick and dirty Cliffs Notes. And then we had our targeted questions and answers on the sheets. Hold on, sorry, I want to make sure we're in the right spot. So for here, again, we have our targeted questions. So is there any of the information that the subcommittee TAC and team is giving you guys that you would want to incorporate back into the document? That's all going to be right there as well. We also, again, quickly have our general comments and our table. So the table is really the most important thing to be addressed. So every single thing going through these documents that the subcommittee team and TAC indicated that they needed information on is right here. And you're going to want to go through one by one and make sure you either address it or indicate why you're not addressing it, either because it does not apply, or maybe it's completely not what you had intended at all, and you can address that as well. If there was a miscommunication between what you guys said and what their feedback was. Or alternatively, if you need help addressing it, that's fine too. It might be worth a follow-up question or comment down here if you're going to check these need help addressing it boxes to say what specifically you don't have information for, or what they could maybe help you find information for. But above here, again, we said that we had updates at the bottom, and this was our quick and dirty Cliffs Notes version. So if there are things in here that you want incorporated into the Tier 1 and Tier 2 information, it's as easy as cutting and pasting. Please do note that I say cutting and pasting. We want to avoid duplication and confusion in any way. So if there's information in here that you think applies to the document, make sure that you're cutting and pasting, and we're going to go through right now how to do that. So, for example, this one says, see Tier 1, question 3. Divers might not be opposed to a user fee if it was towards a non-take zone or sanctuary. However, the Florida Keys doesn't collect a fee to dive in their sanctuary. If you think that this information needs to be put into the Tier 1 question number 3, click on the left side of the mouse and drag it until you have incorporated the information that you want, right-click it, and oops, we're going to go down a little so you can see it. Right-click it and cut that information, and we're going to travel up to Tier 1, Question 3. Duration of activity, make a new little bullet, right-click again, and paste that information. So again, if any part of the SEFCRE Team and TAC feedback seems like it would be applicable and you wanted to keep that information in your document, just cut and paste to wherever you'd like to see it. I'm going to delete this because that's our example and I did this. Any questions at the moment on cutting and pasting or where that information is coming from? You can unmute yourself for a second if there are any questions. I want to make sure we're clear before we keep going, because there's more fun with word formatting to come. Okay, moving along. All right, we talked briefly about that questions table. We really want to make sure that everything we send back to the SEFCRE Team and TAC is different than what they saw initially. So in order to do that, we want to make sure that we address every single one of these and make sure that there is at least one box checked to ensure that they know that we've done our work on our end to make their life a little bit easier. Okay. So really quickly going to a combination example. If you guys remember what we did in the March meeting, we talked about combinations and trying to winnow down the number by incorporating information from various RMAs that are similar to each other. And then in the April meeting, we were undertaking those actions that needed more info or were recommended for archiving or just needed some clarification. If you guys also remember, in the April meetings, we had poster signups to do those need more info in archiving. And in May, we're going to have similar posters to do the combination. But at the moment, I just want to give you guys a little bit more of an example of what we're going to be doing following. So step one is our needs more info and archiving and clarification, because those really have targeted questions on the information that we're lacking. Our combination documents are already different than what SEFCRE has already seen and are vastly reduced in number. But we want to make sure that if we're going to undertake these, that they're cleaned up a little bit. And in order to do that, we want to delete any duplicative information, extraneous information, and most importantly, conflicting information, because we want to have these synthesis groups or combination groups together as a cohesive unit rather than having conflicting information where they're not really sure where to give feedback. So addressing one of those combination examples, we're going to address duplications. We addressed any duplications in these documents with a strike through, which looks like this. Reduce pressure on lobster population by recreational fishers. Well, we have that here already. So this is just getting rid of our duplicative information. And this is a good example right here. If you want to get rid of this duplicative information, kind of the same steps to cut and paste. Left click, drag what you would like to be deleted, and either hit the backspace or delete, or you can right click and cut that as well. So that information is gone. Questions on deleting duplicative stuff? Down here as well, this is actually a much easier example. So for duration of activity, we have changing the regulation as a discrete action while the result of the discrete action is ongoing. We have discrete for lobster mini season, changing the law would be a discrete action, and discrete action. So this information right here is pretty clearly duplicative. So if you're in agreement that that information has been captured elsewhere, again, simply highlight what you don't want in there, hit the backspace or delete button, or you could right click and hit cut. Does that make sense to everyone? Questions on the getting rid of duplicative info? Give you guys a second to unmute if you need to. Okay, moving along to conflicting information. So this was really our best example of conflicting information. The management action is S97, maintain lobster mini season but reduce the bag limit to 6 lobsters per person per day to be consistent statewide and require the review of educational materials and completion of an educational quiz in order to receive an annual license. That is the final working title and is the combination of these 4 recommended management actions. And you can see that they started pretty different. We have a reduced lobster bag limit, an alternate years of mini-season, and eliminate lobster mini-season altogether, and then just limit the number of lobsters allowed, which is pretty similar to the first one actually. So in this case, we have very conflicting information, very different ideas of how to deal with this recommended management action, and those things that are conflicting with each other are highlighted in yellow, which is right below. So for this one, it's pretty clear that a consensus has been come to, but there are a lot of other, well, a few other recommended management actions that do have conflicting information, and in those cases, you're going to want to get rid of the information that you don't want and keep the information that you do want. And one of the most important places to have that information is the intended result. You want to make sure that you have one solid intended result or group of results that aren't conflicting with each other to put forth to SEPCRI so that they have something a little bit more concrete to comment on. So for this example, right here we have end product to have FWC change the mini season for Florida to alternate years. This is in direct contrast with what we can see that the new working title is for this. So if we decide that we don't want this information incorporated, we're going to do the same thing as our duplicative information. So we're going to left click, drag it over any information that we no longer want to be a part of this document, and either hit the backspace or delete, or right click and cut. So now we don't have that contrasting information in there. Does that make sense? And then, since we no longer have our conflicting information, we're going to make sure that it looks like we want this information. It's no longer highlighted. So to do that, we're going to highlight the information, right click, and under this little guy that looks like a highlight color, go to no color. So now, instead of grabbing attention and saying, hey, something is really wrong here, it looks like you guys know that this is what your intended result is, and this is the information that we're going forward with. Are there any questions on that? Give me a second. Okay.
Megan?
Yes.
This is Jane and Nicole. Instead of deleting it completely, can't we move it to the end of the document and have like a little archive on the document? Because I don't want anybody, particularly the management action that's numbered. I feel uncomfortable eliminating, even though we've agreed to combine it, I feel uncomfortable eliminating it from the document in case we need to refer to it at a future point.
So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. We were actually going to talk about that in a little section later. So again, you guys will remember that none of the information is actually going away. So for starters, we have this little section up here that's indicating that we have these 4 recommended management actions being incorporated under S97.
Right.
So those are going to be in an appendix, addendum, whatever we want to call it, at the end of that final report that gets made. For starters, so none of the information is going away. In addition to that, one of the talking points I was going to say later on is that once these 4 management actions, recommended management actions, have become this one management action, we're no longer going to be referring to them with different numbers. So if you remember that, N48 was alternate years of mini season, and you really, really want to bring that back at some point, it's going to be in an appendix or an addendum, but it's no longer the intended result of this recommended management action, which is now to decrease the bag limit to be consistent statewide and require educational materials. You know what I'm saying? N148 isn't disappearing altogether, but it is becoming part of S97.
Yeah, I understand the combining. I'm just concerned about deleting things. I'd rather do a strike through. But if the goal is to clean up these management actions as best possible, I understand the intent.
Okay. Yeah. So remember that we also have those PDFs, and the PDFs still have everything that you guys said and everything that the SEPCRI TAC and team said. So if you want to refer back to a comment, or like I said, in some cases there are pretty extensive conversations that led to these talking points, you can always go back to the PDFs. but we really want to make sure that we have as much of a cleaned up product as possible to go to the SEFCRE TAC and team, specifically because then they'll have more time to dedicate to the most beneficial feedback we can possibly get out of those guys in the 2 days that we'll have them. Does that make sense?
It does make sense, and as long as it's on the original PDF and it's not lost, A-okay with that.
Yep, the PDFs are going to stay in that same ofr.org/review, I believe the link was. So we'll send that around in a homework email again, so you guys will have all of that information at your disposal just in case.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Yes.
So along those lines, because we're working on these collaboratively, so it's similar to what Jane asked, but so say you've got 4 people working on this document, deleting, and all the original information is captured on the PDF, like you mentioned. But how are we working on it collaboratively? So if 4 people are working on the same thing, you're going to have 4 versions of it, and then when we get together, figure out which version we'll use, or how does that work?
Nope. I'm actually going to talk about homework logistics in a minute, but to address your question really quickly, there's going to be a follow-up email from me, hopefully tomorrow, but at the latest Monday, with every person who has signed up for those posters for the Needs More Info and archiving at the moment. In the May meetings, you're going to be given the opportunity to sign up for the combination, so the synthesis documents that we've been working on for the last couple months. But if multiple people are assigned or have signed up for the same recommended management action, you guys will be getting the same email that says, hey, you guys are signed up together, and then you'll already be copied on the same email and know what the other person's contact information is so that you can work on it together. And then additionally, we're going to have a follow-up email about every week or so as those documents start coming back to me so that you guys can see what has already been worked on that has been signed up for and what has not been worked on that has been signed up for.
Okay,
so that
thanks.
you can follow up in that way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thanks.
Hooray. Any other questions at the moment? Okay. So going back in really quick. All right. So in some cases, like I said, there's no information provided for Tier 2 or limited information provided for Tier 1. So after you go through the information you provided and the information that was provided by the TAC and team, all those general comments as well as the questions table from the team and TAC. Additionally, if you have time, go back and just look to see where there are blanks. They can't give you review on anything where there's no information. So in areas where you think you might be able to provide a little bit more information, where the feedback doesn't indicate anything that's maybe helpful to your goals or intentions, and you have time to do so, it would be really great to go back and look at those things. Okay. And again, if you have any questions whatsoever, we have space to capture that, so make sure that we get it down. So really quickly, and I'm going to say this a couple of times so that we really drive it home. This slide is just for the people who are not with us right now. These are the examples that we used. We have RMA S75 and N47 just to illustrate some of the concepts that we were talking about with where to get the information and how to cut and paste, as well as the combination group to see where there's conflicting and duplicative information examples. And then an example of a PDF for RMA N48 that just has a pretty lengthy discussion and the targeted questions at the end of the document where we've abbreviated that to a Cliff's Notes version in the commentary. So this is more for the folks who are going to be listening later than for those actually listening right now. I just threw this in here so that they would know when to kind of switch between those examples. Our homework deadline is Friday, June 26, 2015 at close of business. Like I said, I'm going to go over the homework logistics in just a second, but I'm going to say this multiple times because we really want to have this done so that we can do any work on our end to make sure that the SEFCRE team and TAC have the most possible, best cleaned up, prettiest version of these recommended management actions to review at the end of July or early August. We're still setting a date at the moment. Okay. Alrighty. So are there any questions so far before we move ahead a little bit? Okay. So like I was just mentioning to Angela, you're going to receive an email for each recommended management action that you signed up for to work on during the archiving and needs more info exercises at your April meetings. If more than one person is signed up for that RMA, all will receive the same email so that they can collaborate in responding to reviewer questions or suggestions for adding additional information. I will add an updated context list to your homework email, as well as posting it on the OFR site just in case you want to get in touch with anyone who is maybe not copied on those emails. There will be other RMAs that community working groups will be asked to sign up for during the main meetings. And again, those are specifically the recommended management actions we were looking at during the combination exercise. So those synthesis documents we were putting together. We will have posters similar to the Needs More Info signups that you guys saw in April. We had indicated to you that the RMAs which were combined had already been changed significantly enough for us to be sending something new to the SEPCRE team, but we strongly encourage you to clean up the documents to eliminate conflict and duplication, as well as adding any more information you feel will generate better feedback. So that's the duplication strike through and the conflicting information, which was the highlighted that we just talked about. We want to make sure that it's clean and pretty and, you know, no bold highlighted, anything like that. It's exactly what they need to be reviewing. Some were kept separate, if you guys recall, and now need additional information. So those are those standalone recommended management actions identified by you all after reviewing the intended results during the synthesis groups. So even during the place-based actions, we have those that were incorporated under that big umbrella RMA, which was N146, and then we had a couple of them which you identified as standalones. So those standalones are going to need to be developed separately as well. Where am I? Okay. So cleaning up the combinations and adding more information for the standalone RMAs left over from the combination exercise. So we just talked about that Lodster mini season example. Note, I'm going to go back to it really quickly. As Jane was just saying, these are no longer going to be identified as separate recommended management actions after this time because we're getting rid of our duplicative information and hopefully addressing our conflicting information and any other questions and feedback by the SEPCRE team and TAC. Let's see. Specifically for this, and the reason that we told you guys, or we're asking you guys to review your feedback, so your information that you put on these original Tier 1 and Tier 2s before addressing the questions from the team and TAC, are that it's not going to make any sense with maybe the discussions that you had in March and April if you go at it in that way. So you want to know what you said and what their feedback was, and then maybe any information that you got after working in your small groups in March and April and have maybe cleaned up or changed the intended result or anything like that. There are a couple of examples right here, like I said, where they are identified as being underneath specific recommended management actions, because with this one in particular, the objectives and the intended results were so very different. You know, eliminate it completely, alternate years, just decrease the bag limit. I was the facilitator for the fishing, diving, and other uses, thought it was pertinent to have specific feedback on those because they were so different that it just needed to be addressed. But after this, there will be no differentiation. That umbrella RMA that's representative of an entire synthesis or combination group is going to be the one that moves forward. And the rest of these are going to be archived, but you will still always have access to all of that PDF information. It's not being lost. It's just not all going to the TAC and team. Any questions on that at the moment?
Where are we? Megan, this is Nick.
Hi, Nick.
I have a question. Obviously I wasn't at the April meeting, so I didn't sign up to work on any management actions. So but I know what I want to work on. Can I just send you an email with my list?
You absolutely can, actually, and I was planning on posting that tomorrow or later on this evening, so the sooner the better, and if not, then I will incorporate it in the, I guess, updating email about 5 days or a week from now, so we all know who signed up for what and what's being worked on.
Okay, fine. Well, as soon as we finish this this conference, I'll whiz you up an email with a list of the actions I want to work on then.
Perfect, and we will incorporate that before we post it and send it then. Thank you, Nick. Okay. I know that was a lot to digest, but last but not least, our really quick and dirty homework steps. So our first step is going to be to sign up to work on those recommended management actions. So far we have those posters with the need more info or clarification and those that are recommended for archiving. In May, you're going to be able to sign up for those that were combined and maybe just need small tweaks and refinements, as well as those standalone RMAs that were identified after your combination exercises and synthesis documents. Our second step is to actually work on those RMAs. We recognize that it's a ton of work and people have really, really busy schedules, but the more that we do on the back end, the feedback we're going to get from the SFCRE-TAC and team later on. And the third step is to email me any completed Word documents by close of business on June 26, 2015. That is a Friday. Questions on homework steps? And fear not, the outline and the things that I have just said, hopefully repeatedly in the last half hour, we're going to send out a cheat sheet that Karen has been so kind for us to put together. About all the steps and the little tweaks and ins and outs. So if anything that I said was confusing, hopefully this sheet will do a little bit to alleviate that information. And again, that will be emailed around as well as posted on the OFR site. So we will have all access to that sheet and the steps that we're hoping to take. With that, any questions about anything that just happened?
This is Nick again. Hello.
Yes, I'm here.
So Megan, these Word documents, you're going to make them available online, and my understanding, I know you can edit the Word document online and leave it, in whatever the Microsoft Cloud is. Do you want us to actually download it, do all the editing, and then email you the final Word document?
Yes, please. Because then I know it comes from you guys. So in the interest of being transparent and inclusive, we want to make sure that, the general public is supposed to have access to this information. However, you guys are representative of your stakeholder groups, and we want to make sure that any information at this point is coming directly from you guys. So it will be as easy as...
Yeah, so I download the Word document, I do all my edits, I send it to you. What happens if more than one person works on the Word document?
We're hoping that the people who are signed up to work on the same Word document, so the same RMAs, are going to be working together. We're hoping to not have multiple copies of this because we don't want there to be any confusion by the time it goes to its second review. So, for example, if 3 people are signed up to work on S75, I'm going to email all 3 of those people with this attachment, so that you're already copied on the same email, and hopefully you all will decide to work together on this. For the most part, the combinations and the needs more info and archiving had a chance to be vetted by not one group, but both groups in most instances. So you've already seen most of this information. It shouldn't be completely new because we had those report outs, if you'll remember, in March and April, so that you could work in your small group and then the whole greater group got to already see what happened. So hopefully we've alleviated most of the completely conflicting points of view, but any other conflicting points of view are highlighted in these documents, big and bold.
Okay, so whoever else is listed on a particular action with me, then I coordinate with them to get a final Word document back to you.
Correct.
Okay, that's clear.
Excellent. Are there any other questions? Okay, we're anticipating a good number of questions after we actually send out the homework and you're looking through it and trying to do it. So please feel free at any point. A lot of the times it's easier to just pick up the phone and give us a call. If you think it's something little and we can fix via email, great, but please don't hesitate to pick up the phone. We really don't mind helping. We want to make sure we have the best possible product going for that second review period. Just look at the pretty grouper. Anything else from you guys? Okay, I will take your silence as a no. And remember, this will be posted as well if you just want to hear it again, go through the documents, or if you just want to hear my melodious voice again, it will be on the OFR site. So thank you guys again so much for calling in, and we look forward to getting your feedback.